The big stuff is coming, and you know what I mean when I say that? The big stuff in getting the Super Seicento rebuilt and back on the road starts next episode. In this episode of Super Seicento, it's the big stuff. Hello you lot, Miller Corner here and welcome back to Super Seicento. And as you can probably tell by the fact my little yellow beast is on the ramp, today is the big day. That's right, the day where we free this car of the old, slow and underpowered 1108cc engine and refit my mighty 1242cc engine with a couple of small additions that are going to make it even more mad than it was in the previous shell. I am just so excited to get this engine in, get it started and get this little beast one big step closer to getting back on the road. We've already done a few little bits to the car to get it ready to have the old engine pulled out, but I can't wait any longer. Let's get this engine out. With the cooling system already drained and some parts already removed, the central hub nuts are undone to remove the drive shafts. They haven't been out in a while, so a few love taps from the Persuader help them on their way.
Okay.
Quite chunky shafts considering how little power is actually running through them. Not inconsiderable, are they? Next, the rusty and crusty exhaust. It's well past it and I've got my custom one to go on, so this one is getting chopped. Got it. Then I unbolt the exhaust heat shield. It won't fit over my stainless manifold and it is pretty haggard anyway, so once it's unbolted I can be less than careful with it.
Oh, hello.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Look at that. Then the rear engine mount is loosened along with the gearbox mount before the car is lowered down with the engine resting on a trolley and we can completely unbolt the engine and gearbox mounts. With that done, I can raise the ramp to get the engine out of the car. However,
2 seconds.
holding it.
Drop the table.
With the one thing that you always forget to undo now undone, the ramp can go up and the Seicento is freed of its reliable but underpowered 1108.
Okay. Lovely.
And that is how you remove a slow engine from a car. 3, 2, 1.
Lovely.
For sale, one engine. Then it's on to what's replacing it. My beloved 1242 wasn't damaged in the crash, so it's been tidied up and made ready for the new shell with a couple of new modifications. For a start, underneath the now black rocker cover is a new 866 camshaft. This comes from a later model Punto and it's a common and popular way to get more go out of the 1108 or the 1242. This one is in great condition with recently replaced shims and it should give the engine noticeably more power and torque. Then there's this new 42mm throttle body. It's been ported out a full 6mm over stock by a company called GSR. Rumour has it that this one was actually one of their prototypes. I've got to give a massive shout out and thank you to Toby who actually donated this to the Super Seicento. He's also asked for a shout out to Bimble and Bumble, his two Hebridean Centos. With a much bigger inlet, this wicked throttle body will give considerably more go to my car. This engine's had a birthday since we last saw it, and with its tidy up and the new mods complete, it's time to get it over to the car and get it installed.
You need those wire cutters as well, please.
These orange ones. I think that's it, isn't it?
Blue one. Is there blue ones there? No, that's right, I'm pulling leg. Come on.
Don't do that.
Well, why'd you say these orange ones? How many other pairs can you see?
Well, I don't know. While I have some tea to wake myself up, my dad starts the process of transplanting the wiring loom from the new shell onto the engine. The old loom was damaged in the crash and during removal, so we're just going to swap them straight over. There's no splicing or adapting to do, Dad just has to make sure that every plug is connected and in the right place. While he's doing that, I grab some brake cleaner and a rag to thoroughly scrub the engine bay. This often gets overlooked, but it'll never get a better clean than when there's no engine in there. Brake cleaner is ideal for this, as it easily and quickly eats through dirt, oil and battery acid, and it means I can scrub the engine bay up like new. I wasn't lying when I said this new shell would be better than the old one in any way possible. I had, when I put that photo on Instagram yesterday, I put a photo up of the dials and the red one. And it was an 81-300. And I said, mark my words, by the time this reaches 80, or before this reaches 82, I will have the Super Seicento back. And someone else commented and said, yeah, if you don't drive it. You cheeky b****. I'm so excited to get the Super Seicento back, I've been telling everyone about it, even the hairdresser.
Well, she goes, oh, what are you up to at the weekend and whatever? And I said, oh, working on my car as you do. And she goes, oh, what car have you got? And I said, I've got a Fiat Seicento. I said, well, I've got a few actually, as it happens. And she said, oh, and then I explained to her about everything. And she says, oh, do you think, you know, are you still driving? And I said, yeah, a lot of people ask me after I had that crash, oh, are you going to stop driving? I was like, no, you can't let something like that put you off. It's like, I went out for a walk once and I tripped over. Well, I didn't not ever go for a walk again.
After the engine bay's had a deep clean top and bottom, I'm happy that the engine's going to look awesome when it goes in. Then it's onto the gearbox, which also often gets overlooked. The outside is caked in road grime and the inside layered thick with clutch dust. But while it's out, I'm going to make it clean with my handy brake cleaner and rags. See what I mean when I said dirty? With me furiously cleaning and Dad rewiring like a boss, we soon get all the jobs done. We stick a brand new release bearing in the gearbox and we've now got a clean box and a rewired engine ready to be mated together. Attaching a gearbox onto an engine with a trolley on wheels and just 2 people to do it is fairly difficult, but eventually the box is on and securely bolted up. The engine then gets a brand new engine mount to replace the worn out old one, and with all the prep and cleaning done, the new shell is now ready to accept its tuned 1242 heart. Lowering a car onto an engine is a slow and careful process, hence why I've sped this up, but I can't stress enough how important it is to take your time and line it up properly. If the engine's out of place just an inch one way or another, it might be impossible to connect the engine mounts, cooling system, or any number of vital things. Eventually though, the shell is perfectly square with the engine, and with the engine mount done up, the gearbox mount requires a jack and a bit of wiggling, but it too eventually bolts up. With the car lifted back up, I can bolt up the rear engine mount, and the job of getting the tuned 1242 physically into the new shell is done. The engine is in. So in just basically an evening, we got the old engine out, we got the wiring loom swapped over, we got the gearbox swapped over with a new release bearing in it and the gearbox all clean. We got a brand new engine mount in, and we've got the whole thing physically mounted in the new shell for the Super Seicento. This is exactly where we want it to be at this point, and I'm stoked because what it means is, fingers crossed, tomorrow this is gonna start. That's right, we're gonna hear the glorious 1242 roaring to life once again with the addition of that epic new cam and the ported throttle body, which means we are one step closer to some mad Super Seicento skids. I cannot wait to see what this thing sounds like and goes like when this engine is running and the car's back on the road. But for now, it's late. Let's go get some food. So, you know all that time I spent cleaning the gearbox up? That may have been a bit of a waste of time because there's been a bit of a problem. I was at work yesterday, so Dad came in to kind of finish up some bits on the car, so we got all the wiring plugged in, cooling system was plumbed up, he's even put the coilovers in like a boss as well. They've gone in and they're looking awesome. Well, bear in mind, I wasn't here, I was at work, so, you know, fire it up, make sure it was all okay, particularly with the engine mods. Started up, it ran, it sounded good. There was only literally the manifold on it, as you can probably see down there. Dad was describing how basically he just wanted to make sure it all went in gear, so he put it in gear and sort of let the clutch out, and it sort of felt and sounded like it was in the wrong gear, like if you try and pull away in third instead of first, so it was kind of about to stall, so pulled it out of first, or what he thought was third, put it into first, it kind of did that kind of struggle to pull away again, then there was a bit of a bang, and that's happened. Yeah, you can probably see there's a massive hole in the gearbox. I mean, that is absolutely shot. We've just pulled another bit of it out. I don't know if you can see, if I turn the drive shaft, there is a bit of gear sort of moving around in there. So presumably something inside the gearbox has exploded and we're not entirely sure why. Around the other side there's a crack in the case of the gearbox all the way up to there, and it may even go over the top. We just can't see from this angle obviously, but we have no idea what's happened. This gearbox we know to be good because this gearbox is the one that came on this car. This wasn't in a crash, this gearbox. This one's absolutely fine. Not really going to know until we pull the gearbox off the extent of the damage. We know the engine's fine because the engine ran post this happening. What the hell has happened in here? It's just absolutely exploded inside itself, and obviously it ain't going to drive like that because that drive shaft, we tried turning that drive shaft just now, nothing in there even spins. it won't even load up that wheel. On the plus side, it does run, and it runs very well apparently, with some really sharp throttle response, which is really, really exciting that it runs really well, and it's going to be fast and it's going to sound awesome, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be even more fun, but not without a gearbox in it. We're going to leave the box on for the time being because we don't have a replacement box yet, so we're going to get a replacement box, take this off and see what's happened, but for now, we're just going to have to do odd jobs elsewhere until we can find out what the hell has happened to this poor old fella. Getting a gearbox for the relatively obscure Seicento isn't a same-day affair, so with the car on the ramp and the coilovers already in, it makes sense to get the rear shocks and springs fitted while we're there. I crack the stubborn lower shock bolt with a massive breaker bar, and then set about the bolt with a ratchet and spanner. Dad then unbolts the top and removes the near brand new standard shock, while I repeat the process on the other side. The rear end gets a good cleaning before the once again near new stock spring is pulled out, once again for sale. The lowering spring and the sports shock absorber are installed, making sure to copper grease the bolts beforehand before we jack the rear wheel up and bolt the lowest shock bolt in. The upper shock bolt on the other side appears to be the world's tightest bolt, and it takes about a week with a breaker bar to get it off. With that done, we can repeat the suspension replacement process, tighten up all the copper greased bolts, put the stock wheels back on for now, and we're done for the day.
Another day on the Super Seicento rebuild, and as much as it hasn't gone exactly how we planned it to, we are still a lot further forward. We've now got the new engine in the car tuned, and with everything plugged back in, I have it on good authority that it runs and it sounds really, really strong, but we don't want to risk starting it up again, unfortunately, for the purposes of video, because with what's gone on in the gearbox, there might be issues potentially with the engine swallowing bits of what look like blown up differential in there. So you will hear it running, don't you worry, but probably not until next episode. Elsewhere, the coilovers are in, we've temporarily put the wheels back on, and of course the rear shocks and the rear lowering springs are also installed on the car. The manifold's on, the cooling system's bled, and the car is so much further forward. We're not really where we wanted to be at this point, but we are definitely a lot closer to the Super Seicento being back on the road. I'm just frustrated. But to be fair, you can't predict these things, and it is better that that gearbox differential, whatever it was, blew up here on a ramp rather than out there doing 70 miles an hour on a motorway. So swings and roundabouts. That said, we now need to go and order a new gearbox, and then on camera, don't you worry, we're going to find out what the hell has actually happened in there. We're going to pull it apart and see what stopped my car from getting back on the road a little bit sooner. Make sure you subscribe for the next episode of Super Seicento Rebuild, when we get closer than ever to this little beast getting back on the road. But for now, thanks very much for watching, everybody, and have a brilliant rest of your day. See you soon, and have a good one.